it's nice to have something where you know where the start, the middle, and the finish is. Like when I finish a puppet, I know that it's done. There's always things you could fix and change and whatever, but I know what I'm working towards, especially if I have, a drawing that I'm working with, and it feels really good when you finish a puppet.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Krutinger
and Cameron Garrity.
And today we're talking to Jamie Bressler. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Hi, guys.
Hey, it is so good to have you here. Anybody who doesn't know, Jamie Bressler is an incredible puppet builder. You've probably seen her work at some point online because she's just done incredible things. Super popular at Comic Cons with all of her animation recreation builds. She's worked with the Jim Henson Company, with Puppet Kitchen, Bob Flanagan, and is, of course, also a freelancer as well. And we're so excited to have her here. Jamie Bressler, welcome to Puppeteers.
Thanks for having me.
So what are you working on right now?
Well, I literally today finished a project for Puppet Kitchen. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it yet, so sorry.
Oh, we're all industry folk. Go ahead, spill it.
It's for a children's book author, and I think they want to do some videos with their character. So as soon as I'm able to share that, that'll be up on my Instagram, and I'll share when they have videos ready. And then I'm diving right into a project for Liz Hara, which I'm very excited to be collaborating with her on that through Puppet Kitchen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll definitely make sure, we'll plug it all at the end, but definitely make sure you check out Jamie's Instagram. It is stunning. And if you just look at it, you'll be inspired, or you'll be inspired to work, or it'll make you think, I gotta quit. I can't keep up with this.
No, don't quit. It took me a long time to get here. Everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, we've actually dropped your name on the show quite a bit because we've talked to a lot of people about puppet building and creating replicas, and it's sort of an ongoing discussion with other people we have on, and we've pointed to you a lot of times because I think what's wonderful about the work that you do with creating characters from Inside Out or from Coco or any of those things is that you're sort of translating. So you're still doing a replica and you're still trying to create something that's been seen on screen, but it's not just another Kermit or a Fozzie or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They already look like they should be puppets anyway to me.
Oh, yeah, completely. You do such a great job.
And you can tell too with some of these shows that you can tell that they design their characters in a way to be made if they have to be made, right? Whether it's as a walk around character or something like you cannot look at those Inside Out characters and not look at that that skin that they have and tell that texture was like made. It's begging to be a puppet, isn't it?
Exactly. When I first saw that movie, I was like, is that fleece?
Yeah. Well, and then also,
I think it needs to be fleece.
Another example that I see, that I always think about is you've probably seen this game. You know that lava song?
The lava song.
The lava song. You know what I'm talking about, right, Jamie?
I lava you.
I lava you.
Yeah, of course.
That big volcano, like the way that mouth operates, it's
totally.
Like they did not need to have it operate that way for an animation. They did not need to. But they're like, you know what?
It's going to be a park show.
They future-proof themselves. To make sure it's something that can be made.
Right.
And that thing can absolutely be made. And I can't wait to see it. Disney, get on it.
I know, right?
Totally. Well, I would love to hear a little bit about how you got started in all of this, because you mentioned it took a lot of trial and error. What first got you into puppetry?
I like to sort of say I trip and fell into it. I didn't really grow up like a lot of people. I'm sure I watched Sesame Street as a kid, but it didn't stick with me in the way it does for a lot of people in the industry, I'd say. And like I'm sure I saw some of the Muppet movies, but the first Muppet movie I remember seeing was Muppets from Space. It's just still one of my favorites, and everyone's like, "No, boo, Muppets from
We're on the
Space."
same team. We're on the same team.
I love it. I think it's hilarious. It's the first one I really remember seeing. I think we saw it in the theaters when we were like down in Florida or something at some point. So yeah, I wasn't really on the puppet train, but I was a super artistic kid and was very much involved in theater thanks to my mom, who is also very creative, and was very supportive of my creative side. So she let me take all the art classes I wanted to take, all the drawing, and I took bookmaking and paper making and stained glass and just everything I could get my hands on, as well as like seeing tons and tons of theater, particularly at a place called Coca in St. Louis, where I grew up, who had like a lot of experimental theater come through, which is where I would have seen stuff like anything close to puppets. Um, so then when I had to decide what to do with my life and, choose something for college, I decided to sort of merge both of those and went to school for scenic design, so that I had, both the art and the theater. And then as I got towards the end of my college days, I was like, I don't want to be a scenic designer. I don't know that I'm very good at this. But what I did really gravitate towards was props. So it was my intention after school to go into props, still not even thinking about puppets in any way. And my uncle, who is a stage manager in, sorry, I don't know if you can hear my cat.
It's okay.
Who's a stage manager in New York City, where I am now, for the Today Show for many years and for Broadway and all kinds of television programs. He invited me to come up and introduce me to some people in the industry. So I talked to some scenic designers, and one of the people he introduced me to was Bob Flanagan, who essentially, after like 10 minutes of talking before even looking at my portfolio, was like, "So do you want a job here?" And I was like, "Oh, like this is me just out of college." He hasn't even looked at my portfolio. I was like, "Do you want to see what I can do first?" Or um so I started working there at the end of that summer, right after college, moved to New York.
That's amazing though, and like, and it so speaks to, I think, a really invaluable part of the industry of just being a good person. And obviously, he saw something in you of just like, I want to work with this girl. Like, she's got to be on my team. And I think that's sometimes like even more important than if you have the skills, because they could teach you the skills.
Yes, and that was where I was lacking, honestly, because I'd done a lot of prop work and painting, but I'd never done any puppet building. So everything that I learned on the job there, and it was not easy. It was a very difficult environment to work in. A lot of what we did was for Saturday Night Live, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, a lot of very last minute, a lot of slapdash. Um, I don't know if you've talked to anybody else who has done work for SNL, but generally the call comes in Wednesday night, you have Thursday and Friday to build, and as much as Saturday as you can get, and then typically it gets cut anyway. But so it's long hours, and being fresh out of college and not knowing much about what I was doing, especially when it came to the puppets and the costume stuff, it was really hard. And I will say that Bob did not make it any easier. um, yeah, I sort of had to learn by osmosis. There wasn't a lot of teach uh, uh, positive teaching moments, I would say. Um, so it was actually a really hard time, and I was there for 7 years. Uh, and then at some point, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the nitty gritty of it, but at some point I realized I had sort of outgrown what I could do in that space. And the point that I wanted to learn more, and I wasn't really being given the opportunity to learn and discover more. Um, and I was sort of lucky enough that a year or so before I realized I really needed to leave, um, I met Liz Hara. So she was sort of my gateway actually into the rest of the puppetry community, and I am forever grateful. She was so inviting and introduced me to the folks at Puppet Kitchen, and it was everything was up no, downhill from there. Downhill's the good one, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny that you mentioned like the slapdash nature of what you have to create for Last Week Tonight or SNL. Like those things just need to be up on their feet enough to work for, the 2 minutes they're on screen or whatever it is.
Exactly.
And it's funny because when I was thinking of Liz Hara, as you were saying, even before you said her name, because when we had her on, we were talking to her about like, well, if you build a prop for Henson and it's only going to be seen in front of the camera, like, does it really need to work in the 3 dimensions? And she says like, yeah, we take that extra time so that if you need the alternative take, or if in 15 years it gets used again, that it's usable. And I could imagine being able to spend some extra time like really learning how to refine the work has to be a really exciting step in your in the learning process.
And I'm sure that with SNL too, there's a part of that as well. I'm sure there's some props that they save for future things to reuse, and even though they are fully aware that some things need to be, what was it you say, slapdash,
yeah.
slapdash together, but then again, they still want it to be as sturdy and strong and have as much longevity as possible. So I think that's really where the magic in being able to work in that type of under that type of pressure, because like some people can make it faster and look better, but it may literally only hold up that weekend, and that's not what they want, probably, right? And some people can make it last forever, but they can't do it in that time, and you really need that magical unicorn of people that can kind of get 80% on both of those in both of those categories.
Yeah, and even still, like sometimes you just don't have the supplies and the time it takes. I remember we had to make I think it was like a Thundercats sword for Chris Pratt's episode years ago, and he had to like slam the sword down on a table and kept slamming it the flat way, which obviously is the weaker point, rather than hitting it on the table like this, and he broke it every time he did it. And like you just can't plan for that. And so we just had to repair it every time he did it and hope that that it at least lasted through the live sketch.
Wow.
But yeah, I did have to almost relearn a lot of things that I had learned at in that environment. And a lot of that happened sort of on my own. Because things were so crazy and I was learning things so quickly, that's actually how I started doing the replica characters. Was I was like, I need to practice on my own somehow. I think I'll just start building puppets in my apartment. And that is where I sort of challenge myself. Each time I build a new character, I try to throw some new thing in that I've never done before, just to see how it works. Like the Chet puppet, I was like, hey, I'm going to build an eye mech on this. And like 5 years later, I was like, Adam, can you build this eye mech for me? Like it never happened. I would love to be good at mechanisms, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, no, you definitely have the aptitude to do it, and yeah, you'd be able to do it. Maybe you just need that other shoulder to look over to while you're doing it. Yeah, have you gone to the O'Neill before?
Yeah, I was there 1 year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. So yeah, definitely taking that class with Jim's gonna help a lot. So definitely gave me my foundation.
That's the class that I went to take, and I still have all my notes and everything, but I could certainly copy his work and make it work, but like understanding the concept behind it and like extrapolating what he's done, that's where I sort of fall off the wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a
So,
similar thing because
someday.
I've taken the class twice, and the first time I was just like, I'm here and I'm trying to keep up, and then the second time around I was like, oh, okay, I think I actually understand that thinking process, because there really is that difference of being able to replicate versus
repetition of anything really helps. You know,
Yeah,
taking the
sure,
class
Yeah.
as many times as you can. I'm sure there's a point where he'd be like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
You know, you
Well,
already know.
and he mixes it up too.
Well, not
from
only does
year
he
to
mix
year.
it up, but really he says it every single class too. He's like, I'm not trying to teach you how to make this mech. I'm trying to teach you my philosophy, my way of thinking. But again, that is the thing that maybe takes more than one time for it to completely to go through. But but one thing I want to
Absolutely.
go back a little bit to one other thing, because you were talking about the scenic stuff and then getting into props. I'm just out of curiosity, because I just look at prop making and then puppet making in similar ways, in that they're both things that are made that have to be able to be strong and held up for performance,
Mhm.
right? And they're
Be
small, and it's a
handled.
complete piece. Unlike doing like a scene, like if you do scenic work, like you have to really zoom out and look at the whole picture. That's one thing I love about working with puppets too, is I can kind of focus on one whole. Obviously, if you're working on a whole show, it'll has to be cohesive and whatnot too. But when you're just responsible for one or a couple props or puppets, like it just feels like it's so much. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't want to say less on your plate, but I guess maybe just feels a lot more manageable and less intimidating. That something you can have complete control over and not have to really rely on other people. Is that just part of what draws you to this smaller art of practical props and puppets?
I think so. I think yeah, I think I'm very detail oriented. And so I think the scenic design was just too overwhelming for what, like, I would get into the nitty-gritty details before, the overall picture was created. And then you're talking set dressing, and you're talking, combo with lighting and costumes. And yeah, it's nice to have something where you know where the start, the middle, and the finish is. Like when I finish a puppet, I know that it's done. There's always things you could fix and change and whatever, but I know what I'm working towards, especially if I have, a drawing that I'm working with, and it feels really good when you finish a puppet, um, or a prop or whatever. Um,
Yeah, yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that. I've never had to do like a full scenic thing before, but locally, I'm involved in the local theater community, and people have asked me, because I used to work at a costume shop, and you give me a picture, I can make almost any costume for you, whether dress or tuxedo, this, that, or the other. And people asked me to costume their show. I was like, no, 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 I do not want to costume a show. If you need a piece that you can't find and you need someone to make it and make it, look exactly the way you need, I'll do a costume for you for a prime rate. But I cannot, I just do not have, I could not do it, costume a whole show. It just,
and that's
not only is it not even something I could probably do, I have just no interest in it. Because again, that whole big picture thing for a show of that kind of scale, especially I'm talking about big shows with like 50 people in them, like multiple costume changes.
mhm.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah,
Give
and
me
that's
one thing and
essentially
I'll do it perfect for you.
right. And that's essentially what we would do, like for SNL. It would be like, here are the specialty items that we can't find that we need you to
Mm.
make. Um,
Oh, of course, yeah, because they have their own prop people that
yeah,
do their
yeah,
props, and then they need special made thing. Oh, yeah, so that is the perfect job. That's the
yeah.
perfect
So,
job.
they have shoppers, they have people who pull things from storage, but then it's like, oh, we need like a rolling suitcase that's, 6 feet tall. You can't just go out to the store and buy that.
Right, right.
So we take care of it.
Yeah. um, I love that. So when you're working on, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the replica puppets, because it's such a great learning tool. Um, Obviously you're working with the reference material from either stills or publicity images of the character. Are you then like working solely off of those when you're building the character, or do you kind of know, like, okay, I have to make slight tweaks and revisions to this shape so it can be turned into a puppet?
I try to stick as close as possible to the imagery. at some point I do have to sort of decide the look that I want because those characters, because it's CG, because nothing's real, they can sort of stretch and squash things as they need to make it look right in the frame. Um, so I sort of have to pick and choose which elements I think will look best in the real world. And then I also love to try to find any toys that look really good, any like really well sculpted characters from the toys, so that I can either just take a pattern right off of that, or it's nice to see something like in the 3 dimension.
Sure.
It's one thing to watch a 3 dimensional character flat on a screen, and it's another thing to like hold it in your hand and actually like turn it around and be like, oh, okay, so that curve moves into that, which moves into that. Um, which is why I often end up doing, 3 dimensional sculpts for things anyway, regardless. It's just easier for me to see it.
When you were working on those puppets of the Inside Out characters, did you also design them to be in proportion to each other as close as you could too?
I did, yeah. I still have 2 that I haven't finished. I swear I'm gonna finish them someday. But yes, so that, I could
Yeah.
eventually take a photo of all of them all together and they would look like they belong together, and then like
Without having to scale.
you know
Because even
my
just looking, I got these little Sesame Street things behind me too, and you look at like they're all the same height, but they're not, obviously
Right.
not. Look at Big Bird next to Elmo, right?
Yeah.
Like that,
Right.
that's not right. So it's a matter of like how you want it to look at the end, right? Because even
Mhm.
if because here's the thing. For some of these, for obviously not for those characters necessarily, but well, actually, I'll use them as an example. Like if you went at a slightly smaller scale, the fire. What's the fire one's name?
Anger.
Anger.
Anger. Okay, Anger. Sorry. Yeah. Anger, there's you could shrink him down pretty small and still make him able to fit on your hand as a puppet, right? Whereas if you made him as small as you could to still fit in your hand, then when you go to build Fear, he'd be too skinny for your hand probably, right?
Yeah, and
So,
actually Fear was the first one that I built, luckily, and he
mm,
only just barely fits on my hand. So everybody's built off of his scale.
yeah, that's actually good advice too if everyone's and anyone ever has to do something like that, like start with the smallest character and then scale from there.
Right.
Yeah, to make sure it all fits. That's a great idea.
Yeah. It's a little troublesome actually, because I have such a small hand and wrist and arm that when I'm building a puppet, I have to make sure that a John Little is going to be able to fit in it. If he's the one puppeteering and not me, which of course
Right.
it's not going to be me. Yeah, so I'm lucky enough that I live close enough to Eric Wright, and I'm always like, here, put this on. Do you fit on this?
That's great.
I
Yeah.
think that's called the Tyler Bunch principle. So then what was it like to actually bring the puppets to Pixar?
Oh, that
Is
was
that
a
what-
fun day.
I was living vicariously through you as when I saw those pictures. It just amazing.
Well, actually,
Um,
set that up more. Like, what brought you there? I'm not familiar with the story.
Yeah, so there's a woman there named Kat Hicks who is an animator, and she also just builds puppets as a hobby. And I sort of got connected with her via Instagram. You have those people that you only know through Instagram or Twitter or something. And we just kind of stayed in touch and talked puppets occasionally. And I told her I was going to be in LA. I think I did like a big LA San Diego trip one summer, and decided I would fly out to San Francisco to see Derek, and reached out to Kat to see if I could maybe get a tour and come say hi. And she said, of course, please come. And I didn't ask, permission to bring a puppet of one of their characters. What is it? Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Right.
So I kind of just threw him in a bag because he's so floppy and easy, and I had the arm rods all pinned in already. And when I went to get on the plane, they were like, "What are these?" And I was like, "They're puppet arm rods. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's fine." They're like, "Okay." And so, yeah, I just had him in my bag and brought him in, and I was like, "Hey, I brought this puppet. Do you want to see?" And that's where I learned uh what is it?
The permission is important sometimes.
No, no, no.
No.
I was gonna say crap, what is the thing that the artists say on, not on point, on
On fleek?
I don't think that's a different
not
kind
on
of artist,
brand,
I don't know.
on model. That's
Oh,
what
oh,
all
nice.
of the artists who would come up and look at it, and they'd be like, "Can you rotate it this way? Can you rotate it that way? Wow, he's really on model." And I'd be like, "Oh, I
That's
suppose that's the
amazing.
highest compliment I can get from an animator, and I'm here for it." Um, so that was super fun, and I got to see Cat's puppets, which were fantastic. Um, and yeah, I'd love to go back again someday, and once we're all back to normal,
Right.
and see what else she's come up with,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, it was a good day. Let's just
Yeah.
say
I
that.
Yeah.
bet.
That's
Well, and it's, anytime you hear an interview with Pete Docter, he's always talking about the Muppets too, like, and how much that's
hmm
a big influence on him. So there's that building has to be full of people who would like really have appreciated that.
I actually got introduced to Pete Docter while I was there, and it was like so awkward because Kat was like, "Oh, there's Pete. Let's go say hi." And I was like, "No, no, no, it's okay." And he was like getting his lunch and was just like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was like, "Thanks, Pete Doctor. Bye."
That's amazing. Oh my
Oh, that's
gosh.
super cool.
You know what? What I was thinking about. So again, we already kind of talked about how those characters specifically really lend themselves to be a puppet, but specifically, I don't. You didn't do Joey yet, right?
I haven't done Joy. I haven't done Disgust. They're like half done. Like the heads are
Yeah.
sculpted, the bodies are made, the
Yeah.
fleece is
Well,
dyed, the eyes are made. Like it's really not that far from being done. I
oh,
just need to
really?
do it.
He's got to put it all together. Yeah. No,
I
I'm really
know, I
excited to
know.
see those ones too because, like you were saying, I think in making those choices for the designs, the characters that you've done, well, actually, with the exception of Sadness, I think, but like again, the other two have very puppety mouths, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Joy and Anger, or not Anger, Disgust.
Disgust. Yeah.
Disgust. I'm getting them all. Those two have more. I don't know even how to describe that. I mean,
Just
there's
like
a
human-like
smaller,
mouths.
yeah,
I mean,
human-like mouth, a smaller real estate for the opening of the mouth. So
Yeah.
and making those, because there's also, of course, and obviously yours aren't meant to be actually. You're not making them for a puppet show version they're doing, right? You're making like more of a piece of art, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
making it for an actual show, like it has to be not just able to work, but able to work in a way that's really comfortable for the performer and being able to last a long time, which is also something that a good puppet builder would take into account when designing these characters. To an extent, a puppet that works better is a better puppet than one that looks nicer but doesn't operate well, right?
Yeah, that's something that I've been working on since the beginning of my career. I think I can really nail the outside of a character and what it looks like. I pride myself on clean work and uh, specific details, but it has been a process, like you said, learning, making sure that the puppet is comfortable, that it works well. Sadness is a perfect example. She's got this little tiny mouth. She's a fully carved head. I didn't cut out the cheeks at all. Like you can barely move that mouth. That would not, and I have to do it when I'm at conventions because people will be like, "Oh, say something is Sadness," and I'll be like, "Okay, get ready, thumb." I've actually thought about going in and adjusting her mouth so that it's more usable. Same with my Olaf puppet. I think he was the first character puppet that I made. And he's ridiculous. Like the bottom, I mean, because of his design too, the bottom jaw doesn't move at all. It's all top. And it's really difficult.
Yeah.
So looking at the puppets that I've made even in the past few weeks, it's really great to see how far I've come. Like I love looking back and seeing the mistakes I've made and learning from them, um and taking those skills and improving on my uh build work.
Yeah, and, I think Olaf is a really great example of how you were saying that the animators can bend reality to make the character do what they want. Because, of course, his bottom jaw moves, but if you made
Mhm.
a realistic, perfectly looking puppet, you're right, the top of the head is going to move when you operate it, which is
Right.
why the characters at the Disney, for the Disney shows that they do, it's almost like a ventriloquist puppet, the way the jaw folds back in it. But there's this horrible line seam there. Not horrible. I mean, it's a beautiful design, but they just want it. It's, again, in that case, it's more important for it to operate the way it needs to smoothly than having
Yeah.
that perfect look. So I think that one's a
Yeah,
really good example.
you can't avoid it. I had the same thing with Chet. Chet was kind of a nightmare when it came to the mouth. I tried so many different things to get it to not show that line, to not be able to see that. And then at some point I was just like, you know what? It's a puppet. Nobody thinks it's animation come to life.
Right.
I think I just have to sidestep that and be okay with it, which is really hard for me. But
Yeah.
I did it and I do it, and um yeah, I work on
Well,
that all
what
the
was it
time.
that Jim Rose would always say? You sacrifice anatomy for a for
Functionality?
functionality, I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was what he
That's
was
a good
always,
one.
you cut out, space so you could get the elbow joints in and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, there's a little bit of forgiveness there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as far as like making those compromises on a project, you're like, the project doesn't want me to be done yet, but the next project wants me to be done with this project. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really easy to want to work on the next project when you've been working on the previous project for, in Chet's case, like 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I definitely have that issue all the time. I'm like, can I just work on the next thing? And then of course I'm working on the next thing and I want to work on the thing after that. I think that's just
Yeah.
common for us artists.
I think it's really interesting too that you said that you wanted to build these puppets to kind of, stretch your own skills and have something to work on at home. And I love that you went in this direction because, first of all, I think it's the best way to flex these muscles, like we said, because you're doing this translation from an animated character to a real world character. But I just think it's really interesting that you went with the choice to go with these copyrighted characters that it's like you can't like sell these puppets really, right? Whereas I feel
No,
like
and
most
they're
people would do like original designs to practice these skills and then sell them or try to do this in commissions. So I think again, I love that you're doing it, but I think it's that's what I think is so unique about this guy. I don't think it's the go-to for most people.
Yeah, I think part of it is I've just never been terribly good at character design. I think there are lots of people who do that so much better than I do. I would love to maybe take a character design class someday and work on those skills. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying just, making other people's designs come to life. That's really what I get the most joy out of. So yeah, it was just a natural um move for me to make, especially because I'm such a big fan of Pixar and Disney anyway. And there's so much material to be able to work off of with those characters, and there's no pressure. Like I'm just taking it to a convention. It's not for profit. It's not for anybody but me. Um, and that makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really
Absolutely.
great. Well, there's like obviously there's a stigma in the puppetry world to a lot of people about building like Muppet replicas or replicas of really other puppets in general. Was that something you specifically tried to steer away from because of that, or did you just gravitate towards these types of characters just because of what you're saying, because of your interest in Pixar and those designs?
Yeah, it never occurred to me to build Muppet characters. The only time I've ever built a replica was like a replica of Cookie Monster for a student film that my cousin was working on. But I did explain to them, like, you can't use this for anything but this student film. You can't make money off of it. It was long before I was working at Henson, so I hadn't even seen how the puppet was built and had to kind of make it up. But it definitely was never on my radar to build the Muppets because I mean, I probably shouldn't say this on the Puppeteers podcast, but I still haven't even seen all the movies. I think Muppet Caper is still on my list to be seen. And I only just saw some of the others like in the past few years. Um, so yeah, but I'm really starting to watch and study a lot of those the more that I get into it. I love having the Muppet Show on Disney Plus now. I'm just like critically watching like every episode and seeing how um what's the right word for it? They're not perfect. And
Yeah.
they work as characters. But and in the case of the Muppets, like it's the character that matters, not the build. Um, Even though I love the build part, the character part is just not my strength, and so I would rather work on someone else's design. I think
No,
that came around
that's a
full
good point.
circle.
Yeah, it did. It did. I want to talk about a project that really seemed like you seemed to be a perfect fit for was when John Tartaglia worked on a production of Beauty and the Beast.
Hmm.
And Adam and I again were kind of looking from afar of like, oh, we'd love that because that was like our pet project in
Yeah,
our
oh, a
minds. Like,
long
we would
time
love to
ago.
do.
I pitched it to another local theater, a very small theater that could never do the real Beauty and the Beast because it demands a huge cast and a huge theater and stuff. This is a very small theater, and they always have small casts for that reason of being a small theater and just financial reasons as well. And I always thought, I mean, this years, like 10 years ago, I was thinking this. They're like an Avenue Q style for this would be so much better in my eyes, even from a scale standpoint as well. And I'm like, come on, a 7-foot candlestick? Like, she's supposed to walk around with this thing in her hand. I'm like, that could easily just be a little puppet with a little trigger mech that she's operating in the same way on Avenue Q. Sometimes someone's got 2 puppets on. Sometimes, someone else is operating a puppet. And I just thought it would be so cool to be able to do a show like that to scale like that. And then you guys, you kind of did that. I wouldn't say it was to scale, but it was definitely closer, right?
Yeah, I mean, they did have to be a little bit bigger to read on stage. But yeah, Lumiere is still one of my favorite builds. Again, designed by Eric Wright, um, with John Tartaglia as the director. And I wanted to build every single one, but like there was no time for me to do all of them. So I was like, okay, I'll just do 2. And then Monkey Boys did an excellent job with the rest. Um, and yeah, I'm still extremely proud of the movement that he could get. And Brendan Melifronte brought him to life beautifully. Um, I was like crying. I went to see the show down in Florida, and I was like, huh, my baby, look at
Brendan
him.
Melifronte, he's perfect for that role too. Oh
Yeah,
my
he was
gosh.
fantastic. I think he was nominated for some awards as well.
Oh my
Oh,
god,
wow.
he should have got all the awards.
I know.
All of them, all of them.
It was a perfect storm.
I didn't even see it.
And
I know he would
I'm
have been. He's great. Yeah, that's great.
yeah, I'm extremely proud of that build and that collaboration.
Yeah, what was the other one you did? You did Lumiere and.
I also did Cogsworth. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Great.
Yeah. Great. Oh, cool.
So
Who was a bit stiffer, so he didn't have quite as much movement.
Well,
sure.
he's a
Yeah.
clock.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that's true to the character.
He's a
too.
box, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So you mentioned being able to really see that. Like, I imagine possibly in some cases, like if you ship a puppet out to SNL, you're not necessarily rushing home to watch it on screen. Like, do you get a lot of opportunities to see your work in movement? Or was Beauty and the Beast sort of a special sort of occurrence?
Beauty and the Beast was a little rare, I would say, because a lot of the work that I do is in commission work, and go off to people for their own personal, collections or projects, and I don't necessarily see them performed. But yeah, every now and then having an actual puppeteer, somebody who's trained, like put on one of my characters is just phenomenal. Like seeing someone, because you can't have a puppet without the puppeteer, or a puppeteer without, well, I guess you could have a puppeteer without a puppet, but shh, don't tell them that. Um,
For the
so that I can
purposes
keep
of this
building.
poll quote.
um, but yeah, somebody who has that training, who has that physicality, to bring one of my puppets to life is always magical. Like I built the puppet and it still like takes my breath away and makes me cry.
Yeah, it
to
is
like
such a
really see
shame
them
when
in
you don't get to
view.
see them get used at all. I mean, I can't tell you how many puppets I put into a box and I'm like, this is the last time I'm seeing you, little buddy. We'll close it and then
Yeah.
ship it. I've even emailed people back years later, like, hey, did you ever do anything with that? Like, I'd love to promote it, your work, and just be able to see it in action. They're like, oh, I'm still, still working on it. I mean, some of these artists, they work forever. Like some point you got to ship the project, okay? Just to at least let
Yeah.
it grow on its own. Let us see the holes. Let us see the flaws so you can grow from it. But so many people just
Yeah.
wait for perfection, so it never comes. So.
But it's true. It's hard to enjoy a puppet when it's static, because they're meant to move. They're meant to be alive. And you need a performer to do that. And it is really something when you get to see it, but you don't always.
So now working at Henson, are you doing what kind of work are you doing there?
Um, it's so sad. I haven't been there in years at this point,
Oh, okay.
thanks to COVID and
Sure.
and everything. But when I was working there, it was mostly on projects other than Sesame Street. I did a little bit of Sesame Street work, a little bit of prop work in the beginning, and then I worked on things like this big uh, Bunraku style Lego project for Legoland out in Dubai. Worked on a big show. I'm blanking on the name of it. The also directed by John Tartaglia for
Oh, the cruise ships? Was it the
for
Jim
the
Henson
cruise
show?
ships. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jim Henson show I did work on, the silliness show, but this was it was like I think it was called Secret Silk in the end. And it was a story about a crane and there were these huge hydras. It was a massive undertaking and we built it 3 or 4 times for
Wow.
various ships. But yeah, the silliness one was where I first was introduced to some classic Henson bits that I'd never seen because I'd never watched the Muppet Show. So now when I'm watching the show and like bits that I worked on come up, like the conductor who has a balloon head who's like conducting the balloons and they pop on cue and then the last one fizzles and so to complete the song he pops his own head. Great bit. It's somewhere in the first season I think. And I had to come up with like a version of that for this like sort of classic Henson bit show that they put on the ship. So yeah, I did get to work on that. And
You did the Snuffy too, I think.
oh, that's right. Yeah, I worked on the Snuffy for Sesame Place. That was really something. Annie Fresh, who led that project, did an amazing job putting us all together and building what I think is only the third or fourth Snuffy in existence. We had 2 of them in the shop for reference, and so I was just like crawling around and measuring stuff and really getting in there and seeing what it's like. And I mean, it's just incredible how they built that in the first place. I don't even know. And then we had to make adjustments to ours because it wasn't a full walk around. He was sort of a sit around,
A
if
sit
you
around.
will.
Yeah, sit around, yeah.
So yeah, that was really cool too, getting to work on that.
Yeah, you look at a
Yeah.
design like that and like it's been around long enough that you just kind of accept it, but it's kind of like what a weird thing for someone to like decide to make, right?
Yeah. And then to make so successfully, like the fact that they've been using the same puppet for so many years, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It kind of creates a problem for puppet builders too, right? It gets rid of, yeah, I think we probably mentioned it before, but one of the times I went to Sesame, I remember they were showing me some puppets and they're all in those boxes on those walls. They pull it out. They showed me the count. I was like, oh my God, count is beautiful puppet. And I don't even remember why exactly I asked it. Were you there with me?
I wasn't, but you've told me the story a bunch.
Yeah, I was gonna say they pulled it out. I said, just out of curiosity, would you know when that was made? And they opened it up and it said like 1987. I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm like, this puppet's older than me. I'm like, oh my gosh! Like,
Well, you know,
if they only make a puppet every 30 years, I'm like, how often are they going to hire puppet builders? But of course they do.
Well, they
for
also
projects.
and they build puppets for all of the Sesame Streets all over the world.
Yeah,
And those are always coming back for refurbishment and new costumes and cleanings, and so
Yeah,
it's
and
never
that's why
ending.
I think he even mentioned that. I think it was Jason Sack or maybe Jason Weber who was showing me, and I think he even said like that just means like this part of it was. He's like it probably has all new foam inside since it was made and
totally
things like that.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, maybe I'm just misinterpreting that too, but it definitely had work done.
Well, no, and Ryan Dillon posted an image. I'm not sure quite how long ago it was, but he had a little pink puppet on one of the AMs, and the tag inside it literally said 1969.
Oh my gosh. That's
So
great.
it's like this should be in a museum. Like this has no business on set.
Okay, Indiana Jones. But yeah,
so
I
true.
think it's also that once the puppeteer gets comfortable with the puppet, they don't want to change it. It's like molded to their hand perfectly.
Right.
So why would you go about changing it if you don't have to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so all of this is kind of getting me thinking, like, so if you're not necessarily someone who grew up with puppetry, but you appreciated theater and you appreciated all of these sort of surrounding art forms, how has your relationship with puppetry, just as a fan and as an audience member, changed over the last 10 years or so?
That's a good question. I definitely love the art form so much now, and just find it all fascinating, especially when it comes to puppetry that I'm not as familiar with. Shadow puppetry and marionettes and things that are not necessarily my focus. I can't help but see those things on stage, and I'm just like, oh, like heart eyes at, and any sort of new puppetry or tricks that people are doing on stage or on screen. I'm just like, how did they do that? I need to know. Um, so yeah, it all comes down a little bit to the puzzle. Like I sort of think of puppets as a puzzle, and you're making all of your own pieces and then putting it together. And so I want to know how to make all of the different kinds of pieces, all the different ways. Um, that I do this a lot. I'm like, what's the Henson way? What's the right way to build this puppet? And honestly, there is no right way. There are better ways than others, but some puppets, don't need as much structure. No matter how much I push to put as much structure as possible in a puppet, sometimes just fabric is the way to go. Like these plant puppets that I've been making for Etsy, they're just little sock puppets. There's nothing in there. Just a tiny bit of foam brain to support the flowers and a mouth plate. Um, and
And those
like
are so
that's
beautiful. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Thanks. So that's been a really exciting thing to explore too, to like, see someone else's build and they're just like, oh yeah, it was just this. And I'm like, it was? That's so great. um, yeah, so it's definitely become much more of a fascination for me, I would say, having been in the industry for, 10, 11 years now. It's definitely my focus. I don't see myself doing anything else, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to do anything else. So hopefully people always need puppets because
Right.
I
Well,
can't
and
do any. I can't even
yeah.
make coffee. Like, I don't drink coffee. I can't make it. I won't even be able to do that.
No, and it's so clear that you would have a love for it, or else you wouldn't be doing it in your spare time, right? Like you would just be, punching in at Puppet Kitchen or Henson or wherever. So no, it's clear that the love is there, and it's awesome to see how that changes.
Yeah, the love of finishing a puppet is definitely better than anything.
Yeah.
There's always like I think Eric calls it the slump, somewhere towards the end, and it's the same every time. I'm really excited about the beginning, then I'm very hesitant, and then everything's going okay, and then everything is awful. Everything is awful forever, and then it's done. And it's like, oh, yay, it wasn't that bad, was it? And then you start all
Yeah.
over again.
Oh yeah, no,
That's
that's
a-
The
exactly how it
terrible,
works.
terrible
Yeah.
puppet building cycle.
That's a familiar curve.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that, what is the part of it? Does there tend to be a certain part of the puppet build that always seems to be the slump for you, or is part of it that you just don't like?
Starting is definitely the hardest, I would say. I am a very productive person, but also a terrible procrastinator. Don't, not many people I think know that, and it's been even harder working from home and not, being able to go anywhere this past year. But I would definitely say starting is the worst because it could be anything. You could go anywhere. You could mess up and have to start over. And then it's the still seeing it in pieces and knowing that it's going to go together and probably be okay, but not being it because, there's always a bit of an order of operations. And you look at each piece too closely for too long and you're like, it's all terrible. It's all terrible. I should just, throw in the towel. It's awful. And then you put it together and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's fine. Everybody calm down.
Yeah. For me too, it's also a matter of like momentum, right? Because like I find
Yeah.
often when I'm on a build, like I'll sit down and build for 8-10 hours and just keep going because I know if I stop, I'm gonna procrastinate. So I try to procrastinate my procrastinating, so I can get it done. Like this project I'm trying to start for Cameron. I know the second I could probably build it in a day. But
For context, we've had this podcast for less time than I've been waiting
No.
for. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do it this month. I'm going to do it this month.
Then I've been waiting for this puppet for him to build for me.
Hasn't been that long.
I mean, I've brought this up before, but yeah, this puppet that I built, Chet from Monsters University, he lived in 3 different apartments with me before he was finally finished.
That's like a boyfriend, maybe.
And it was, yeah, that's a horrible boyfriend that you want to kick out.
Yeah.
And he turned out gorgeous, and I'm so
Oh, he
happy
is
with him.
gorgeous.
But he also happened over such a long period of time, and I learned so many things within that period of time that I would look at things that I did at the beginning and be like, well, I could do that better now. Should I redo it? It's like, no, you can't redo it. You need to just move forward and finish it.
Yeah. And that one, I remember when you had first messaged me about making that iMac for you, and then you were showing me some pictures of it, and you showed me the fabric you were using, which isn't a traditional, the industry standard puppet type of
Nylon
fleece. Yeah, and there's a
Mhm.
handful of them. But you what exactly was that? That it had like scaly look to it, right? Was it a lycra?
It had 0 stretch. I think
Oh, it did?
was like a
It looked like it
oh
had stretch
yeah.
to it. Oh.
The stuff on the belly was the same texture as the stuff on the outside. It was like this like snakeskin texture. You've probably seen it, like I think Spandex House sells it. So I did buy some of that and I dyed it and airbrushed it to match. But the exterior, his back and his sides and the top of his head and stuff, that was all. I don't know if it was a China silk. I found it in Mood. It was already the right color, and I was like, this is gonna suck, but I'm gonna use it because
the
it's
right
already
thing.
perfect.
I just
And
remember you sent me a picture of it. And I saw that like snake scale
Mhm.
thing. I was like, how the heck are you going to hide seams on this, or even tempt to, right? And then I remember you saying, I think I remember you saying that you're gonna. Oh, I'm gonna cut around the patterns and kind of like
I
block
did.
it together. I'm like. That's the only way, but oh my gosh, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
I don't think I ended up doing that. I think actually the seam ended up hiding okay. It sort of created its own new pattern. But yes, I did say I was going to do that, and I would have if that needed to be done.
Yeah. I just remember like, oh my gosh. glutton for punishment. You're right. That's how you
seriously.
get the. But again, those are the little details. 'Cause again, I've done stuff like that with certain types of builds too. As far as like again, a technique that I would never want to do again. But yeah, you'll do what you need to do if it's the only way. I mean, and you see other
Yeah,
people that
if it's
do the
the thing
time
that looks the
saver
best.
way. You know, it depends on the project, right? Like if you're all about the finish, then that's what you're gonna do. If you're all about getting it quick for a theater production on stage where people are just gonna see it from far away, that's a different build. It's kind of like what we're talking about with your SNL work and stuff. Yeah, just build to the project, right? That's
Yeah.
a moment where, that's
Yeah,
what a choice.
like Bellwether, for example, from Zootopia. I bought a really great like sheepskin for her hair, but it didn't have quite the right texture. So I did a test of rolling up some wool roving and like needle felting it into foam, and I was like, this is how it has to be. And so I did like hundreds of little wool roving balls all over her hair to make it look right.
Wow.
I
Oh my
know, I'm
gosh.
crazy.
It was worth it.
Yeah, it
I
was.
mean, they're all
That
beautiful, but that one is
she's
beautiful too. It's like,
gorgeous. Yeah.
oh my gosh. Wow.
What? So you mentioned about like it's a puzzle that you have to not only make the pieces but then put it together. Are you thinking about the build in your head like when you're not working on it? Like what's the thought process for you as you're trying to kind of solve that Rubik's cube of sorts?
Yeah, I sort of see it in my head the way like in an Ocean's 11 movie when they're like describing how they're gonna do the heist, you like see it and like the camera zooming in and they're like, and then we're gonna go in here and then we're gonna jump like this. That's what I'm seeing in my head is like
Hmm.
me in fast motion, like making all the parts and being like, okay, and then it's going to go together like this, but then I'm going to need a washer. And, as often as I can, I try to draw those things out or write those things down or I will forget. But yeah, I feel like I'm constantly thinking about it. Because sometimes you need that time away from the actual build in order to work through a problem. You can sit and stare at the materials all you want, but sometimes just going off and doing something else, like taking a walk, watching a show, letting your mind wander, um, that's what brings the answer about. It happens a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
The writing it down is a good idea because I know I've woken up like sometimes it's first thing in the morning and it's like that's what I
Uh-huh.
need to do. Like, oh yeah, it's the next leaf first and then whatever.
Yeah. It comes
And
to you in a dream.
yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing is, I was just wondering, people will look at your work and they're gonna melt when they see it. They're gonna be like, oh my god, it's gonna seem unachievable to a lot of people. So I think one thing that people would probably love to hear from you. Do you have like just 2 or 3 just puppet building tips? Any technical tips? One can be a philosophical tip, but some technical things that they can hopefully put into their practice right away.
Hmm. Um, let's see. Nothing I'm coming up with is easy.
Doesn't have to be
That's
easy.
okay.
Doesn't have to be easy.
Well, then I would say I am like learning both additive and subtractive sculpting, um, where you either have a block of foam and you're carving it down into a shape, or you have a shape and you're adding things onto it to create your final structure. Um, I think figuring out which of those you prefer, or you can do both. But I think because I learned sculpting before I learned flat patterning, that's sort of what I gravitate to. And so I include a sculpt generally in most of the characters. I will, sculpt it in clay, and then I'll cover that in masking tape, and then I'll draw out my pattern pieces and peel those off, and then I have my flat pattern. I've never been very good at just like mashing pieces of foam together and then creating patterns out of that. Um, I need more order in my chaos. So I would say a good way to practice something like that is, I think they used to teach this at Puppet Kitchen, is like taking an orange and slicing the peel and then peeling those peels off and using those as a pattern and then making a ball. It sort of gives you an idea of how flat pieces come off of a three-dimensional shape. So that's
And
sort of
wasn't part
my
of it too trying to get it all off in one piece or in as few pieces as possible?
um I
Maybe
don't
I'm thinking
remember.
of someone else.
I never did it.
Okay.
Because I joined Puppet Kitchen after I was already like
You knew what you were doing.
doing my own.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it is. I mean, you can use anything, but the orange is nice because the peel comes off on its own.
Depends on where you get your oranges. I mean, I've had some that I've wrestled with. Sorry, let's go. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just don't eat much citrus. Um, uh, and then laying those pieces flat and seeing where you need darts. So that's that, and actually carving down a block of foam into a head shape, into a hand shape, into whatever. And then I think just understanding how shapes fit together, I think this still goes to wanting to do like a physical sculpt, but having a three-dimensional understanding of a character really helps, um, in my opinion, in my
Yeah.
process.
No, those are great.
That gets me thinking, actually, this is going back a little bit, but in really sort of studying the Pixar and Disney characters as you have you kind of learned, sort of maxims or whatever about character design from, studying Fear or Bellwether or any of those characters more than someone may normally have?
It has definitely influenced how I build characters, I would say, because I do look at them very closely, and I do, buy all of those like behind the scenes art of books to see like where the character design started and how it got to be in the final version. And I mean, that still blows my mind, because I don't know how to do that necessarily. To look at someone else's design work does help me understand form. I mean, I would say especially Imelda from Coco. I, never took any anatomy classes, and have never really studied human anatomy, even though I thought about it, knowing that I was probably going to be an artist of some kind. Um, and Yeah, definitely making Imelda, because I was carving real human bones essentially. I was like, "Oh, so that's how that piece goes into there, and this is how your jawbone attaches." And um it was a real education.
I
And
bet.
I highly recommend everybody sculpt a skeleton at some point.
Yeah.
What did you
If you
sculpt
really
her
want to
out of?
understand human anatomy. She's out of ethafoam, I think a 9-pound ethafoam, so it was a little heftier than something that might squish. Yeah, so I definitely learned a lot from that, and then watching Coco over and over again to look at those structures like of the human skeletal system was fascinating.
No, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is great. I just have another off of my other question of some tips. Do you have any things that it can be either things that you think that puppet builders should try not to do, or is there something that you see a lot of puppet builders do where you're like, why do they do that? Don't do that. Any things, any tips as far as that?
I think eye focus is a thing that trips up a lot of puppet builders, I mean, even me sometimes. In fact, this puppet that I just finished, like I said, sometimes you're so close in it that you can't see the forest for the trees. And someone will be like, that eye focus is way off. And I'll be like, oh, you're right. Let me fix that.
Yeah.
And especially for like photographing eye focus, I have a few friends who've been with me to Comic-Con enough that they will actually go take the photo. Like if someone asks to take a photo of me with my puppet, they will go and help the person take the photo so that the
Mm.
puppet is looking at the camera.
That's
And
super
if
smart.
no one, yeah, and if no one's there to do that, they're like, oh yeah, he's looking at the camera. I'm like, he's not looking at the camera, is he? It's hard to tell, and it's definitely a learned skill. So I think that's the number one thing that I can think of off the top of my head. And then I would say overbuilding, which is something that I've definitely come down from. Like I said before, sometimes you don't need as much structure as you think. You know, a piece of rope, it will do for an arm sometimes. Um, and having like a hard hinge is generally not great for a puppet. So I think you want to have as little hard, um, with the exception of like a mechanism, as few hard pieces in your puppet as possible, because like when you're thinking about something like a shoulder joint, like you have a lot of movement there, and your arm goes up and it goes down and it goes forward, and if you have like a hard um, hinge in there, you're only gonna probably get one type of movement, and maybe that's what you want, and um, maybe that's what works for your build. But if you're looking for the full range of movement,
Yeah.
having as soft an attachment as
No, that's a
possible
that's a
is
That's
great
really
that's a
good.
really great
Yeah.
point too, because like sometimes in a performance, like an arm can get twisted, and then if it's foam or if it's got the beads in or something, it might still kind of look kind of natural. But if you had a hard elbow, then your elbow's bending up, like that's gonna be so obviously wrong and just
yeah,
take people out of it.
and it's more likely to break,
Yeah.
That too.
if it's not bending the way it was built to be bent. um
Yeah.
yeah, I think you just want to give your puppeteer as much mobility as possible.
No, that's great. Yeah, those are great tips. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that. Well, as before we wrap up, was there anything that you were hoping to be able to talk about when we got chatting today, but that through our questions we weren't able to bring up?
I think that was everything. I
Okay.
do want to say how great Antron Fleece is, and I'm loving that all these different versions are popping up again. Um, I love working with fleece. I mean, it's the best. I feel like there's a reason why we use it. It hides all the seams. It dyes beautifully.
Oh yeah.
Long live Antron Fleece.
Yeah, I know. That's why I stocked up on the 12-ounce nylon fleece. Because the only place you can get it right now is Georgia Stage. So and they
Yeah.
still have tons of it in stock. I was talking to the guy just a month or two ago, and he's like, "We've got tons and tons of it." So I bought a couple of rolls since they're not really making it like that anymore. They still have a
Uh-huh.
humongous stock. So I stocked up myself.
Yeah,
You're not
that's where I
supposed
get
to
my
say
fleece.
that.
And
People are going to see this.
I don't mind saying it because
You're not
I'm
giving it up.
covered. I got enough. If I use all this, I'll be dead by then. I've got enough to last me a long time. But oh yeah, because they also have the Nyla fleece too, which is great. And I use it for some stuff, and especially if I want something a specific color, I'll just order that from them, if just to save myself the time of dyeing
Yeah.
it.
Well, Jamie, as we wrap up, we'd love to know if you have a good puppeteer story in sort of the Jim Krupa tradition. If there's anything that went poorly in a puppet build or anything that made you want to pull your hair out then, but we could laugh about it now.
oh my gosh, I was so unprepared for this. Um, oh no, you'll have to cut out this pause
No,
'cause
that's okay.
I'm trying to think. Um, something I guess the closest I came to having like well, I've had multiple meltdowns, but the biggest meltdown I think I had was building these 12-foot long Ursula tentacles for a production of Little Mermaid in my tiny, basically, studio apartment. Um, and I had all these ideas and I cut out all these like wooden concentric circles and then like connected, like I think I drilled holes in them and then drove cable, like steel cable through all the pieces because they were going to be coming at it was a as a stage in the round at North Shore Music Theater, and they were going to be coming out of the center of the stage and just sort of being waved around. And I think it was a suggestion. All of the breakdowns I have are when I don't listen to my gut and I take someone else's suggestion. Um, and it was not working. And I had spent so much time on this mock-up, and I just remember I was sleeping in a loft bed at the time, and I just remember like holding it over my head in my apartment and just like throwing it on the floor. And I was like, "You are garbage." And I just started from scratch. I went and bought a ton of mattress foam and just like made one really long mattress foam piece, cut out some sections of it, covered it in the fabrics. Worked perfectly. So much lighter. This thing was heavy before, so much hardware. Um, yeah, the basics are the best.
Yeah, trusting your
um,
gut.
Keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
yeah.
See, I thought you were gonna say when you were making Bellwether and burnt yourself on the iron.
You mean when I was ironing in my lap?
Yes.
Well, you know,
Or maybe that happens
we all
more.
make
That wasn't an
mistakes.
isolated.
We all make mistakes sometimes.
course.
I did have like a silicone mat in my lap. I wasn't that stupid. But yeah, I hadn't even remembered that. Thanks, Cam. But
Hey,
no,
anytime.
I do stupid stuff like that all the time, and I try to listen to that voice in my head that's like, you're gonna hurt yourself if you follow through with this. And I'm starting to learn to listen to the little voice and not hurt myself. But definitely there's those times, you probably know this, Adam, where you're like holding your hand on something and you're cutting and you're like, my thumb is too close. Oh, yeah. I need a Band-Aid.
Yeah. That's the
Medic.
thing, I've got a couple voices in my head. Mine says,
medic.
I say I got a couple voices in my head. One says, "Oh, don't do that." And the other one's like, "Do it, do it, do it, do it." So they battle inside, and then sometimes it's just birds whistling and stuff. Just keep working.
Yeah, but we all do stuff that we should not do. Like one of the things that they always say is to cut away from yourself with a blade. I don't know how to do that.
No,
You
same.
don't have as much control.
You don't have as much control. You can't get a straight line. So, you just learn to be very careful and know where that blade's going to be, and take your time and don't use a dull blade. Use a nice sharp blade.
Yeah, that's one thing I remember.
That's
I remember
huge.
the first time. I mean, when I was young, I remember them saying like, "Oh, a dull blade is more dangerous than a sharp blade." I'm like, BS. And then of course you get into using it and you understand why very quickly because you have more control. A dull blade can hit something and then just go astray there. So yeah, that's definitely.
Also,
an
you're
important
trying
tip.
much harder to push through something, and you don't know when it's gonna go free. And I actually think a small addendum to that saying is the sharp blade that you use after you've been using a dull blade for too long is the most dangerous tool, because
Ooh,
you
that's it.
forget how sharp it is and how
Yeah.
good it is at cutting.
Yeah, I remember
So, yeah.
my one blade mistake that I made. It was so dumb. I was just like, I just gotta do one cut. But I want, how you put a ruler up to it sometimes and you can do a nice straight cut. That's what I was doing. But I used a plastic ruler instead of a metal ruler, and I was going straight down, and it caught onto the plastic, then rode onto the plastic, and right over my thumb. And it's just, you get that moment where you're just. Like, if I don't move, it won't hurt. And then you're just like, and then it's just like, oh gosh.
Oh, man.
And I have a pretty good pain tolerance, I really do. But it's just like, I don't even get mad. I'm just like, oh, I'm like, at least it didn't get on the puppet. Now this is gonna cut into my building time. Who cares about my thumb? All right.
Exactly. Like, oh, now I got to put a Band-Aid on it so I don't bleed on the puppet.
Now it's gonna be hard to stitch this with 4 fingers. Oh.
Right. And I would say pins and needles are also the other worst. I'm constantly poking myself, and it's like a paper cut. It doesn't hurt that much, but it's like, why?
Yeah.
Or like, I would not recommend like pressing the back of a needle with your thumb, because the back end of a needle is not as sharp as the front end, but it is still sharp.
That happened to me before too. Oh yeah, that's the worst. And especially because it's not that sharp, it really pops too. It's like rather than just like a slide. Ooh. That skin popping. Yeah. We're getting too graphic, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're getting too graphic. I crossed the line.
It's dangerous. Puppet building is dangerous, kids.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah. Well, what's the best way for people to follow your work?
So you mentioned it, Instagram. I'm at JME Bressler, Bressler, just my last name. I have a website that someday I will revamp and update, but that's there, and my email is there for contact for commission work, which is a little bit closed right now. I surprisingly have a lot of projects on my plate, which is great after a year of practically no work. But I love to hear from people and what commissions they're looking for, and just know that if I can't fit it in, or if it doesn't work out, that we can work together. Know that I'm just as sad as you are usually. I want to build all the puppets.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah.
And you have an Etsy store too.
That's right. Yes. It's Jamie B's Makery, and there's a link to there on my link tree on my Instagram. And hopefully I'll have 2 more of these flower puppet characters ready to make soon, and then I have another batch planned for the end of June.
Awesome.
So hopefully I'll be able to churn more of those out faster.
Perfect.
Great. Well, Jamie Bressler, thank you so much for joining us. It was so great to catch up with you, and love to have you back.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
We're at the end of another episode of Puppeteers, but the fun doesn't stop here.
Visit puppeteers.com for show notes and links to projects mentioned in this episode.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at PuppeteersPod, where we're posting new things every day.
Puppeteers is edited by Matt Bowen and made possible thanks to viewers like you.
If you enjoy this content, you can join our incredible Patreon patrons who are supporting the show for as little as $1 per episode. Those folks get access to early releases, uncut episodes, official Cup O tiers just like we use on the show, and could even submit interview questions for our guests. Go to patreon.com/puppeteerspod to learn more.
Another great way to support Puppeteers is rating and reviewing us on iTunes, leaving a comment or subscribing to this channel, or tell a friend about your favorite episode.
Thanks again for joining us on Puppeteers Puppetry Shop Talk, in-depth interviews with the world's most passionate puppeteers.
Hosted by me, Adam Krutinger.
And me, Cameron Garrity. No, this sounds great. You ready to go?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay.
Can you hear my cat?
No.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Okay.
No.
You're fine.
He might scream at me a little bit.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, hello. Okay, he's really distracting now. Come on, buddy. He's not allowed out there generally, so I'm sure he was very excited to be poking around.
Bressler.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
And we'll cut it there.
I'll be right back. I just have to go to the bathroom.
Oh.
Okay, cat. You've had enough. Get down.